The day is in the midst of a year-long look at affordable housing in the region. What specifically do you think the legislature should do to help people who can't afford to buy a home or are struggling to rent an apartment?
It's a great piece, by the way. I've been reading it. One of the interesting things that jumped out at me that immediately I think we could do is related. There was a discussion about there's some vacancies because of the application process and because people who have evictions on their record aren't able to qualify for some of the units. So there's things we can do right there to make it more affordable and to help them get past that hurdle to make sure that everything is all the units that are available are filled up. Another thing is, and we have an issue with oversight here. We have an issue at Branford Manor. It's a HUD facility, and the tenants at Branford Manor, I know that Day has been covering it as well, have been struggling with mold issues for decades. And for whatever reason, when the property transfers to different owners, the issues aren't resolved. And where that ties in is the HUD model for affordable housing and to help our communities is broken, and it condemned a generation to be alienated and set aside in communities. And it's very frustrating. I think in our community we watch residents struggle, and we're unable to do things to help them because of the layer cake of accountability and the fact that HUD has primary domain control over that area, and they're approving Branford Manor they keep inspecting and approving them, and they continue paying the subsidy payments. And it's very difficult for the city and town to take action against them, to hold them accountable when there's sort of a disconnect. So I really think an important part of this is having the oversight and accountability for the programs that we have right now. Restore trust and faith that the state and the federal government can be good stewards in that area, and that's going to go a long way to getting the community involved and giving them confidence that affordable housing related topics don't segregate our community in ways that are impossible to address. Also, I think we need to be a little more business friendly to developers that want to come in and build affordable housing. Again, I've said this many times, we have to be careful to to come at the local community as if there's an adversarial relationship between local zoning and zoning in Hartford. I hear a lot of people on this topic, especially in the Hartford side, say the model has failed, the local community has not met the metrics that Hartford set for them, so they want to appropriate zoning regulations and sort of impose it on the town. I get back to the HUD model. That wasn't developed locally. That was developed on high and put onto the local community. So I think that there needs to be strong discussion. There needs to be public hearings on the local level where community members can come out and there's input, and we need to work together to approve zoning changes that are necessary on maybe even into different boroughs in the areas, sort of as we address the Airbnb situation, right? I think each, within the towns, we can sort of have a granular discussion about how to integrate housing into the fabric of what we have. And it doesn't have to be large developments. We can do accessory dwelling units. There's changes that can fit into the fabric of the community and bring everyone together to support the objective and get us to where we need to go. Also, it ties in with transportation. I think extending Shoreline East, extending public transportation in general, bringing people in from different areas that are more affordable to work, and it's a cohesive issue. It's a major issue, and I think we need to be careful not to create a lot of anxiety in residents. And like I said before, the adversarial nature of the discussion needs to be set aside, and really accountability first. We need to be accountable for the programs, And back to what I said about development, when we're looking at when we're trying to attract developers to come here and invest their money in these projects, the community needs to be presented the facts in an unemotional sort of business-like manner so that they can address how it fits into the community. A lot of times I think we have people who get emotional about this, and they may, they again create an adversarial thing with open space or other objectives in the community, and it's not constructive for addressing that issue. I want to bring up this other fact because it's relevant to my race. My opponent, Andre, was the state rep for this area, while Branford Manor it still had the mold issue for decades. And I don't question the fact that he cares about the members of our community as I do, but he didn't take any action to hold HUD accountable or to get that situation resolved. We just can't step back on these issues, right? If we let down our most vulnerable in our community, they don't have any other options. And it's not acceptable. So that's kind of where I stand on all that.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. Connecticut recently enacted a law designed to provide safeguards against lawsuits for out-of-state patients seeking abortions in Connecticut and any provider who helps them. Do you support efforts to make Connecticut such a safe haven?
I do. I also... I've stated this before, and I just want to state it here again, so that there's clarity on the issue. Whether we have a Republican governor, a Democrat governor, or an independent governor, I don't care. If anyone moves against women's reproductive rights or the basic human rights of any other group, I would oppose them. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. The state's surplus has grown to over $4 billion. Do you support the decision to use some of that to lower the state's pension debt, or do you think more should be returned to the taxpayer?
Well, I think that the state's pension debt has accumulated over 70 years or so, and absolutely that needs to be addressed. It's not going away, and we've just chipped away at it with some of the surplus. So ignoring it isn't helpful in the long run. Debt service is higher anyway. So in essence, dealing with it is returning money to the taxpayer because you're paying less to carry the cost. But generally speaking, broadly speaking, it's really not a political issue here. I think, Connecticut needs to be more affordable. We do need to figure out how we can get tax relief to residents here. And also, successful states don't have corporate headquarters leaving in droves, and there's only so much of that can happen. Connecticut is not at the top of the list for any corporation looking to start a new business here. And again, this is one of those things I think that there's just a polarization on this issue. We all live here. We all want this state to be successful. This isn't a question of tax breaks for corporations or doing more for working families. This is a question of we just have to look at what's working, what's not working. We're not competitive. We're not the tax regime that we have here. People can go to Texas and open a company. Entrepreneurs and our young people aren't staying in the state. Not pretending that that's not happening isn't helpful. What the solutions are, we can all talk about it. But honestly, it's the problem with some of the tax regime here in Connecticut is twofold. One is we have things like the fee for your at DMV for emissions that are supposed to go to climate change. And it's cynical because it doesn't. It goes into the Special Transportation Fund and goes somewhere else. So we need to clean up the language. If we're collecting a fee, it should go for the thing it's designed for, complete transparency, and then address what fees are really necessary and how can we streamline that process to save money and to be more competitive. Again, companies, and also we see with COVID, you have really skilled people that can do remote work. Stonington and Groton, Mystic, beautiful areas. We could attract some amazing entrepreneurs, small companies to come in and digitally reach all over the globe. But if we don't have a friendly tax system or a competitive tax system, why would they do that? They can settle other areas. So I think if we continue to protect our environment, leverage our assets, we can attract an inflow of talented individuals who can create jobs, earn money and pay a fair share of taxes and contribute to our economy, and we get away from this this paradigm of just bumping taxes up all the time. It's again, like I said, it's not competitive for business. It also drives away retirees, people on fixed income, especially on the local level. California has props that lock down property taxes, when you buy it. We should look at things like this, look at what's working in other states. But, the general theme is that we need to be more competitive, and we need to look at why we're doing the things that we're doing and is it working. If you're talking about income inequality, Connecticut's worse than it's ever been. So it's not working. Whatever objectives, you're taking more tax revenue to maybe redistribution or programs. If the program's working, great, let's do more of it. And let's also get the taxes, a lot of times, get into this a little bit. Okay, so with the gas tax, that hits working families, and that hits our farms and any petrol-based businesses, and the people that can least afford it. There's no argument that we should transition it off of fossil fuels. Also, for an economic reason, it's a finite resource. It's economic suicide to have your economy dependent in the long term on that. The issue is all these transitions are always going on the back of the working people, the working families, and the people who can least afford it, and it makes us less competitive. So again, just to summarize what I've been talking about on this topic is, we need to work together. Lay out what the objectives are. Let's in a bipartisan way say, are we really meeting it with raising taxes or lowering taxes in this area? Is this fee necessary or unnecessary? And look at what other states are doing and whether it's working.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. How should Connecticut move forward to address climate change with regards to electric vehicles, wind power, and other clean energy strategies?
Right. Well, the first thing is climate change is global, right? So I think we can all, as citizens of the United States and the globe, participate in putting pressure on sovereign wealth funds. Like I know the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is the largest in the world, is looking at investing in companies only that have a net zero commitment. So we can all do a lot, and that's very effective. The economic incentive is huge when you put pressure on companies that are aligned with your values. So that's one area, and I think continue to explore renewables. We've been addressing here at the State Pier, offshore wind. The good part about that is this is what I call eco-friendly economics. The supply chain for wind and solar and all the renewables, we can participate in that. We can create jobs here in Connecticut, and jobs in building them and servicing them, maintaining them, jobs creating the components. So with all of this stuff, I think everything should be on the table. And again, it gets back to let's just frankly look at what's working and do more of what's working. And like I said before, let's just make sure that in the transition, we're not hiking up the gas tax that working families and people who, can least afford it have to pay for the transition. We can find other creative ways to pay for transition to renewables that don't burden our economy and slam jobs. So I would be for looking at all of that. And also just in terms of climate change in general, I know Groton has a coastal resilience plan, Mystic specifically, that we're working on the Greater Groton one, and Stonington has one, and in my district here, the 41st now, it's the first time the two are together, so I look forward and working to harden the coastline in both towns and protect Mystic and institute some policies and procedures that prepare us for sea level rise and the effects of this. So, and again, that can also be, I can make sure that there's funding and support for this from the state to do that, but it's also a win-win. We can create jobs in doing all these things, and some skill sets that are marketable and helpful throughout New England and other areas. So, I think every generation has challenges, and the best thing we can do is be optimistic, work together, and get away from sort of the negativity and the confrontation on stuff. I think that, again, we all live here, and we all want the best for our state, and just get away from the partisan stuff, and let's just work on it together. Let's roll up our sleeves and apply solutions that are working. Collect the data and adjust accordingly.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. Do you think the 2020 election was conducted fairly and Joe Biden won? And as a follow-up to that, do you support early voting and voting by mail initiatives?
Yes, I believe Joe Biden won. Especially, I believed it before I got involved in running, but also having gone through all the process of registering and understanding how the register of voters in your town works and everything, it's quite apparent that were there any large-scale violations of that, it wouldn't go unnoticed. So yes, unequivocally. Early voting, I support everything that allows people to vote and have their say in our democratic process. Only thing I would say with early voting is, as long as it's a verified ID, you can know who the person is, and you go through that process, I would absolutely support that. I think that one of the greatest things about our country is that people can get involved and select who they want to represent them in their government, and effectuate change over time. It's not always immediate, and but I think voting is a huge part of that. And I think the more enfranchised people feel, and the more that they understand that they have access to voting and their voices are being heard, the better off we are.
All right, thank you. All right, so this will be our last question. It's a little bit more specific to your district. So the question is, Electric Boat is projected to see an influx of employees in coming years. What impact do you see that having on Groton and surrounding communities? And what would you do as a legislator to support your district during this time?
Well, I think we're in a great position with Electric Boat hiring. It's to have stable jobs out 20, 30 years is fantastic. And I think we've done great things. Electric Boat has done a wonderful job with Grasso, working there to put a pipeline to train our youth to have skills where they can earn really solid, well-paying jobs. This gets into the housing issue. As a legislator, we circle back to our earlier discussion about housing. Most of the people who work in Groton right now don't live like at Electric Boat. They don't have the option to live nearby. So we need to promote responsible development that is conforming to the area that the residents want. But I think there's a lot of opportunities to do that. We need to attract the right developers to do that. This gets me to the Mystic Oral School issue. And back to local zoning control. The state had the property at the Mystic Oral School, and I don't know how we're here, but you have a developer who, is very unpopular and has some serious concerns related to performance, but somehow a development agreement was executed with that individual, with that entity, and it's unable to be stopped. And so we need to do our homework up front better, because with this particular developer, it's great to have a developer. You want to make sure that they're going to perform and actually pay their workforce. So we need to be sure that the community is involved up front, and we have developers that come that are qualified, and then engage in the process of figuring out how to create housing and shops and retail and other entities that serve our town, whether it's Mystic Oral School space, something that fits there, or City of Groton area, infill development in other areas. But I think one of the things is, Connecticut and our area, our specific region is a little redlined by developers as a area that says no to everything. So part of that is can be changed just by, again, the approach, making sure that a developer knows how to present the project correctly to the town, and also to make sure we don't have populists on our boards and commissions and our town council that are just grandstanding and creating adversarial relationships and not presenting the facts. Development can be emotional, and this, everybody, especially when it's near someone's home, we need to be respectful of that, but we need to present facts, because back to your point about electric boat, we have a tremendous opportunity to provide residents in our town for these workers and provide additional retail space, but it can't get done if we lock ourselves up in infighting and poor oversight and theatrics that have nothing to do with solving the problem. So as a state representative, I'm kind of a bottom line guy, and I'll hold people accountable, call people out, and also support people for when they point out issues or they create issues that are unnecessary and blocking the community. It gets back down to the general theme, like if we just look at things objectively, we're all residents of the 41st, and we all benefit by this area thriving, and we all benefit by supporting new residents coming in and having housing and spending their money in this area. So we just need to remember that and not let partisanship or other political opportunistic things come up that pull our focus from that. It's about what's best for our community, and the opportunity at Electric Boat is something most communities don't have. Most communities don't have a solid employer that's here for that long with solid contracts out, providing support for our national defense, and all the other knock-on businesses. Subcontractors for Electric Boat, all in the area filling in. There's a lot of jobs that are created in there. So I would welcome all the new workers as constituents, and be proud to represent them and listen to their concerns, and be sure they have affordable housing and are participants in all the great things in our district.